Hey everybody, Ollie here for the weekly news recap of the 29th to the 4th of February 2024. So, this week Sony had a state of play on Wednesday evening, which we had a look at. And if you want to check it, I have my full reactions, if you like. If that's the thing the kids do on YouTube. To the whole thing, it was okay for the most part. So Sony have a recap of everything that was happening. It's alphabetical order as opposed to running order, so these are going to be some weird tone changes here. But anyway, so we'll go through them. David the Diver, indie darling, is coming to PS5 at some point. Hey Melwen, you getting on? There was no release date given. It's just 2024 at some point. And there will be some Godzilla DLC, kind of randomly. But it's like, okay, weird one. We're doing multi-streaming, that's true. We have Buffemisani, who's sometimes in Melvin's stream, is also streaming Elden Ring currently, and had to drop off to do this, but it's a good fun time. Death Stranding 2, we'll let this... Oh, for God's sake. Every time, no matter how many times I enter this, it tells me I am the oldest man currently living on the planet. No attempt to actually check anything. Anyway... Death Stranding 2, as you can see, is a very, very long trailer. It's almost 10 minutes long. I was put 1900. It's like, you're not getting my actual birthday. I'm not putting that out there. No one needs to know how old I actually am. Yeah, it's almost 10 minutes of just what the fuck, as you might expect from Hideo Kojima. We've got this cat that's also a bird, that's also a snake. They've recovered somebody from inside the chiral stuff. Sam is returning, but for some reason he's blonde now, or possibly has grey hair. It's hard to tell. Troy Baker's character, whose name I forget right now, is the main antagonist of the first game. He's back to possibly be a friend this time around. Hard to tell. Again, everything about Hideo Kojima stuff is hard to tell what's actually going on. How much of this is just in the trailer to fuck with people? Who knows? I think he gets some. Enjoyment out of people trying to come up with conspiracies and whatever out of his trailers, and really they're just there to fuck with you, and they're never referenced again. Gross. Whoever this person is part squid. We'll skip ahead a little bit here. We've got this doll who's at low frame rate, so that it looks like it's an actual puppet. And it's actually based off like kind of old Japanese puppetry where there's like the puppet has multiple faces that you can swap between. Anyway, we won't go too much further into that. I forget the guy's fucking name. Anyway, he's back. He's not dead, even though he absolutely should be dead at this point. And a lot of other random shit going on. But kind of the biggest takeaway from this trailer is that the game won't be out until next year. I skipped it. 2025. Anyway, the game will be out. When in 2025? I don't know, probably early. I'd say the game is pretty far along at this point. Anyway. We'll have Death Stranding at some point on the channel. I've been planning to do a Let's Play of it again before the sequel comes out. Dragon's Dogma 2... I'll just let this play in window. Dragon's Dogma 2... showed off a lot of stuff we've already seen, but it did show a little bit more of a new character class, the Warfarer, I think is what it's called. And it looks like the character can swap between the other classes, but they probably don't have access to like the full breadth of their abilities. They probably have like a couple of abilities from the different classes and can swap between them. If I had to guess, this is probably a New Game Plus character class. Maybe not. Might be a secret class or a secret vocation, as they're called in Dragon's Dogma. Anyway, I'm still really looking forward to it. I've been debating about whether to do a Let's Play of the original game, just because Dragon's Dogma 2 is effectively a reboot, kinda. They're sort of doing the story again, so there's not a huge amount of difference. Kind of thinking that it doesn't really warrant a Let's Play of the original, but we'll see. Mostly because that game is really long. And if I'm going to do it, I need a good reason to do it. Foam Stars was shown off mostly to just remind you it's coming out. It's going to be launching day one in PlayStation Plus. Foam Stars is Splatoon, but not Splatoon, but not by Nintendo. It is effectively the same thing. Helldivers 2, again, reminding you that it's coming out this week. I think 6th of February, Tuesday, I think it's when it's out. It's a 4-player, up to 4-player cooperative PvE thing. It's kind of Starship Troopers, but they don't have the Starship Troopers license, but that's kind of what they're going for. Judas. So Judas... I'll actually play this one out. So Judas is the next thing by Ken Levine, who you may be familiar with. He is the creative director behind the original BioShock and BioShock Infinite. I don't think he had anything to do with BioShock 2. Because of the way Irrational Games was run, the company got shut down shortly after BioShock Infinite. And Ken Levine opened a new studio where he continues to be abusive to his staff anyway. It's called Ghost Campfire, something like that. Stories. But Judas is very much just BioShock again. I'm going to skip ahead here a little bit to the actual gameplay. But it's very much the first-person shooter type thing, where one hand has the gun and the other hand has some weird mystical powers. This time around, there might be a kind of time loop going on with it. I don't think they're going for the roguelike idea. Or a death loop idea. I think it's just story-wise you jump around in timelines or whatever. The Judas part is that everyone is kind of enjoying their time here on wherever this land is, but it's all fake and it's not real or something, and you are destroying the system to sort of wake people up kind of thing, but they're not happy about you doing it, you know? It's like getting pulled out of the Matrix, right? It's like, yeah, it was probably the right thing to do, but could you have not just left me in there? Because the real world fucking sucks. Anyway, wishlist now. We don't know when that's coming out. I'd say next year. Legendary Tales is a VR game. It's another medieval fantasy first-person arena thing. It looks kind of fun, but a lot of them do look kind of fun until you play them, and then you find that the controls don't really map really well to your real-world movements. It's very much you kind of have to play it to know if it's any good or not. Metro Awakening. So Metro Awakening VR is kind of what the Metro team have been working on since Metro Exodus. Well, I doubt it's since Metro Exodus. I'd say maybe the last 4 years or so. They've probably had to start and stop a couple of projects. But this is a VR title. It is a prequel to the Metro series, so we're back in the Metro. Metro Exodus, as the game might suggest, we left the Metro. We went out into the world. It turns out it wasn't an irradiated wasteland. But this is going backwards, so we're back to hunkering down in the Metro, assuming the above world is just no-go, complete irradiated nuclear winter, you'll die if you step outside kind of thing. But yeah, it looks nice. It's mostly a question of how long the campaign is, what are the requirements for stealth and these kind of things. There are some, like, concessions that need to be made for VR gaming. If you're playing a stealth game and you have your character crouching, all the time in this sort of half-crouch walking duck walk thing, that's fine for the video game character to do. It is not fine for you as a person to be doing for like hours on end, never coming out of the crouch. No, your knees will explode, or you'll have the nicest looking ass anyone has seen. It's going to be one of the two, and in my case, my knees would explode. Anyway, again, I don't think we have a release date for this. It's some stage this year. But yeah, more kind of but more kind of crafted narrative VR games is what I'm looking for, and not the usual, we'll just throw a bunch of assets in an arena and you can go have fun with it. It's like, meh. We've done that. Move on. Everyone's had their chance to do the tech demo free ER thing. Start doing something different. Rise of the Ronin showed off a little bit more gameplay. We got a bit more of a look of how it works, how combat works, and stuff like that. It looks like it's gonna be a bridge between the Neo combat, like a bit of Assassin's Creed traversal, and there's a bit of Ghost of Tsushima in there as well. So showing it off here, they're in Yokohama in and around the time the Japanese Empire opens up to the rest of the world. So Yokohama is this kind of blend of Japanese architecture and kind of European architecture at the time. We got a grappling hook, so we got a little bit of Sekiro, Tenchu, Batman stuff going on. We've got this glide thing that is very Batman-like. There's not a whole lot more shown about traversal. You can apparently just drop straight onto your horse, and your horse will be fine with it. Your horse will absolutely not be fine with you doing that. He'll say, "What the fuck are you doing? You're gonna break my back." Anyway, combat. It's like very close in, which is like, it is kind of Nioh, but at the same time, Nioh would have presented it like Dark Souls style with your character's center in the frame. Whereas this is more of side-on, it's a lot more cinematic, which is a lot more Ghost of Tsushima style, but that was more of like the dueling stuff rather than you just fighting regular enemies. Yeah, okay, this is more Nioh kind of thing. Looking at it and the kind of damage your character takes, it doesn't look like it's going to be as punishing as Team Ninja's earlier games. Like, that one attack you would have taken there from this Claude guy would have killed you in Nioh, whereas it took like a tiny bit of health off you here. I think we're going to be good. It looks like they're trying to bridge Assassin's Creed Ghost of Tsushima, but with like more in-depth combat, which is really what Team Ninja is a little bit better known for. Silent Hill: The Short Message was a out of nowhere, nobody had heard of it kind of thing, except it kind of had. It had been rumored for a good while. This is an in-house project by Konami. A lot of the other Silent Hill projects are being done by other studios, outsourced, whereas this one, it was entirely within Konami. It is free to play, and it is available now on PS5 for about a year, and then it'll probably be on PC after that. We're going to play it probably not this week, but probably the week after. We'll give it a look for reasons we'll get into later. It's a short game. It's about 3 to 4 hours. It is the kind of first-person cat and mouse stealth horror that I'm not a massive fan of. But I will give it a shot because it is, it's pretty high production values. I kind of want to see what Konami, who haven't really been developing games for a good while now, but I kind of want to see what they've been doing and how their in-house team works. Critical reception has been mixed, to say the least. Anyway, Silent Hill 2 showed off a little bit more gameplay. It leaned really heavy into combat, and if you've played the Silent Hill series before, you'll know this game is not known for its combat. Absolutely not. If anything, its combat is the worst part of the game. They're really making this Silent Hill 2 remake look a lot more like Resident Evil. And the whole deal was that they were separate genres. Resident Evil went down the really physical horror action route. Your kind of schlocky zombie film kind of thing. And Silent Hill was way more down the kind of experiential, psychological horror kind of stuff. They very much went in different directions, and Bloober Team are sort of pulling it all the way back into Resident Evil, which is not a good thing. Kind of want Silent Hill to have its own vibe. Anyway, we'll see how it turns out. From what I've heard from like behind the scenes things, Bloober Team have no real control over what is marketed for the game. I would say this is probably a misstep from Konami to be going all in on the combat stuff, but we'll see. Anyway, Sonic Cross Shadow Generations is a Sonic Generations game, but it's adding Shadow. I never really got into the Sonic series, so I don't know. All I know about Shadow is he's a big edgelord, and people love him for being so 90s. But anyway, Stellar Blade. We hadn't seen a lot of Stellar Blade for a good while. And as it turns out, it's coming out pretty soon. It's coming out the end of April, which is much sooner than I would have expected. I thought for sure this was a second half of this year, like close to the end of this year. But no, coming out soon. Stellar Blade is from a Korean developer. This is actually, I think, their first It's their first big AAA game, anyway. I think they've done some smaller games in the past. It certainly looks very pretty. Gameplay-wise, it plays a bit like kind of action RPGs. There's a bit of Metal Gear Rising in there. Metal Gear Rising Revengeance. Some people have likened it to Souls. I think it's a little too fast to be Souls. It's actually even too fast to be Bloodborne. It's a very fast-paced looking game. Let me get to the actual combat bit. All right, here we go. So yeah, I'm kind of curious to see. See, a lot of the combat that we're shown in the trailer, it's the character winning the fight, and we're not seeing a lot of, getting hit or having to dodge or, getting your ass beat or anything like that. So it's hard to tell exactly how punishing the game might be. Is it a Mazocore, Dark Souls, Neo type thing, or is it more of an action RPG, God of War, Metal Gear Rising kind of thing instead? We'll find out. There's some considerable Nier Automata vibes from the game. That's what I was getting from the trailer. It has a lot of that story element to it as well. It's people descending from the moon to aid mankind, and mankind is on the verge of collapse, and so on and so forth. You even have a little drone that pilots you around, and your main character dresses inappropriately for combat. Anyway, we'll see more of that in April at some point. Until Dawn is getting an unnecessary remake because there's an unnecessary film coming out soon. Anyway, yeah. I mean, I got a chuckle out of hearing the lines from the game again. It was just a prank can and so on. But this game does not need a remake. And it's frustrating that Sony is spending so much time on games that don't need remakes just because TV or film. The Last of Us got 2 remakes that were completely unnecessary. Now, Until Dawn is getting a remake that is very much unnecessary. The PS4 version works fine. Looks better, even, than this version. This is allegedly a remake or a rebuild, I think is what they went with. A rebuild from the ground up kind of thing. All new assets, lighting, and so on. I think it looks worse, personally. But I don't know. I have a lot of nostalgia, I guess, for the first game. They just turned on the lights. That's true. That's true. There's some better, not better, is probably not the right way to work with it, but they dropped it into Unreal Engine, and Unreal Engine does things with lighting. The lighting is better. Depending on how you work. Dark lighting can be more cinematic, sets the mood a little bit better. Harsh shadows and that kind of thing. They're a lot of times stylistic choices. You don't just get rid of them. Anyway, if you haven't played it, I guess it's an opportunity, but I'm pretty sure it's on PlayStation Plus, the original one. V Rising, if they add new deaths, it's okay. And I'll play it when it's, in quotes, free, and it ends up on PlayStation Plus. Yeah, to be fair, I will probably give it a look. If they add some kind of new content to it, I would give it a look. But even then, I don't think it warrants what it's going to be, a 69, nice, 99 euro, dollar, whatever stipulation. Anyway, V Rising is a survival action RPG kind of thing, so think like a cross between Base Management and Diablo. That's kind of what it's going for. It is out on PC now, and co-op would have been nice. They might add co-op, maybe. It's not being developed by Supermassive, which is interesting. And a lot of the reason for that is that Sony and Supermassive aren't really on good terms. Sony wanted Supermassive to stay a first-party IP holder. Sony owned the IP for Until Dawn. Supermassive don't, which is why Sony were able to give it to a different developer. And Supermassive wanted to go third-party. They wanted to release like the Dark Pictures and so on different platforms. Sony were like, no. They did it anyway, and I guess the relationship hasn't recovered. Anyway. V Rising, I think, is currently in early access on PC, or it might actually even be version 1 on PC. But it is coming to PlayStation at some point. What was the date? Just 2024. Again, another, I don't know, some point. And then the last one, Zenless Zone Zero. It's going to be very difficult to say. Is from Hoyoverse. They're the Genshin Impact people or the Honkai Star Rail people. So, yeah, you might be expecting that this is a gacha loot box kind of thing. I can't advocate for it because of that. You know, it does have that stipulation that you need to be a person who's okay with having those mechanics in the game, and you know, you self-discipline that you will spend just not enough, or you know, don't destitute yourself and so on. I play those games. I don't spend money on them. I'm able to refrain from doing it, but I can't say the same for everybody. Your mileage may vary. I enjoy the games. They're fun. Zenless Zone Zero is a little bit of a different genre. Genshin Impact is a kind of slow-paced action RPG. So like Breath of the Wild, kind of, is what it's often compared to. It's not really Breath of the Wild, but that's kind of what it's usually compared to. Honkai Star Rail is a turn-based RPG, like the kind of the old school Final Fantasies. And Zenless Zone Zero is a much faster-paced action game. So think like the old brawler games and like the original God of War series, like that kind of stuff. Devil May Cry, but I don't think it's going to be anywhere near as in-depth as Devil May Cry. Anyway, that was State of Play. I think it was okay for the most part. A lot of those games are miles away. I think the earliest game is obviously the short message, which came out literally the day of the State of Play. But after that, like the closest one is going to be... Foam Stars is out this week. Then Dragon's Dogma, probably, which is the end of March. Oh no, Helldivers. Alright, never mind. Some of these are coming out pretty soon, actually. But a lot of the big ones are like, I don't know, some point this year, maybe? And then Death Stranding 2 is definitely not this year. It'll be out next year. Anyway, outside of the State of Play, there were other things going on. The Chinese Room showed off more of Vampire the Masquerade Bloodlines 2. This is a much shorter video than what is available. There's like a whole 30-minute Q&A thing with the devs. It's pretty spoiler heavy, so that's why I'm not showing it to you. But this is a much smaller one. Very few, if any, spoilers in this. Shows a little bit of exploration. Shows a little bit of combat later on. Kind of stealth mechanics, like misdirection, feeding on people, then going loud, having to fight. First-person melee combat is always a bit weird. I've never been a fan. It feels like you're not actually hitting the enemy. As someone who has done kickboxing for a number of years, decades at this point, it doesn't feel right. First-person melee just doesn't feel right. It doesn't feel like you're fighting. Anyway, there's more of that. As I said, there's like a full 30-minute thing that you can check out yourselves if you're okay with spoilers. Brothers: A Tale of Two Sons remake got a gameplay trailer, which is here somewhere. So again, this is not done by the original developers. I don't actually know who's doing this. Hazelight I don't think they own the IP for Brothers. Anyway, Avant Garden. Okay. Brothers: A Tale of Two Sons is like kind of the first game from the developers that would have gone on to make A Way Out and It Takes Two, that Melvin and myself have both played co-op on the channel. Brothers is not a co-op game, even though you control the brothers independently. If you like, each half of the controller controls one brother. So like the left analog stick and the D-pad and the left shoulder buttons and so on control one brother. And the right analog stick, the right shoulder buttons, and the right face buttons control the other brother. You need to do things in tandem with each other. There's some puzzle elements around that. There's some, can you make one brother, run in one direction and make the other brother run in the other and not have them fall off platforms and stuff like that. There's a bit of like, how good is your hand-eye coordination? But it's not particularly taxing. It's quite forgiving for that kind of gameplay. And it's a pretty good story, I think, it's a story told without any words, but I think you get the gist of it. I think it works on a lot of levels. Anyway, it's getting a remake, and I think it had a release date February 28th, so the end of next month. You'll be able to play it on everything except the Switch. Oh no, it's not on previous generations actually, so it's not on PS4 or Xbox One, so it's all current gen and PC. Is strange because I wouldn't think the game would be very taxing, but there we are. Citizen Sleeper 2, a lot more info coming. Oh no, sorry, I'm going to say a lot more. Not actually a lot more. I don't know why I said that. Very little information is, I think, is what I wanted to say coming out about it. The developer runs a Substack that occasionally updates, and kind of the news here is that, yeah, don't expect it anytime soon, basically. The developer says there's about a year left in development. It was announced in, I think, May of last year, and then June of last year, there was a little trailer that came out about it during the Summer Games Fest. When it does eventually come out, it'll be releasing into Game Pass and then PC with Steam. But yeah, there's more than a year left. It's already looking bigger and more varied, but I ask you to be patient for a little while longer as we prepare for our big reveal and a few small teases between now and then too. So we're talking next year, really, for Citizen Sleeper 2, which is fine. It gives everyone else a chance to play Citizen Sleeper because it's good. Check it out. Elwyn has a full Let's Play on her channel. Just give it a look. Anyway, more delays. Life by You early access has been delayed out to June. It was going to be in March. So Life by You is meant to be a contender for The Sims. The Sims has kind of got that whole genre locked up right now. There aren't too many lifestyle simulators out there that aren't just The Sims. Life by You is an attempt to sort of give people a different developer, you know, a little bit of competition for The Sims because they've gotten kind of lazy to developers and they put way too much content for way too much money. You know, if you wanted to get the full The Sims 4 or 5, whatever the fuck it is at this point, it's like several €100 to play it now. To finish the side missions for Citizen Sleeper, yeah, they can go on for a while, alright. Anyway, the 3-month delay will allow for the usual things, you know, we want to improve it and, you know, have people, you know, enjoy the game and so on. Our new release date is now June 4th instead of March. Why are we taking extra time here and not bringing it out in March? Because there are still some bugs, there's performance they want to fix up, there's some assets and stuff they want to get in, so I guess it's not ready for prime time, which is kind of a weird way to look at it, because early access is meant to be for this kind of thing. But in recent years, early access has kind of turned into a soft beta, which is not really what it was supposed to be. It was meant to be like, help me build the game, instead of, I've already built the game and now just do QA for me. It's kind of what it's turned into. This is why you see these kind of delays for them to fix things. It's like, it's kind of what early access is for. But people have bigger developers have either used it as a soft beta, so now the knock-on effect is that players, customers, see early access as an early beta instead. So it's kind of lost that, you know, it's kind of lost the leeway that people would have given earlier early access games, where they're like, yeah, they're only developing the game. Of course there are going to be bugs. Of course there are going to be problems. And now it's like, there shouldn't be major problems now in early access, which is like, not the reason it was made. But that's what it's turned into. Which isn't ideal, but here we are. Okay, so another live service thing didn't even make it out of early access, but again, this is because early access is not what it's supposed to be. You know, this is kind of just soft beta at this point. But anyway, Warhaven is closing just after 4 months. Warhaven, you may not recall, it was meant to be a big PvP medieval fantasy melee game. So kind of like For Honor, but with like more people. And from the people who were playing in the early access builds, they were saying like the game struggled to have that many people playing. I think the issue was that they started off with it being a 16 versus 16 thing, and then eventually it dropped to 12v12, and now it's 6v6, which is really not that much more than For Honor. For Honor's 4v4, I think, or 3v3, something like that. I guess they found out why For Honor is only 3v3, but anyway, it's disappearing before it technically ever came out. But of course, at this point, when you launch into early access, you are out. You are, which is not the way it's meant to be looked at, but here we are. All right, we'll round out our updates. Steam Next Fest is next week, starting tomorrow. Steam Next Fest is an opportunity for a bunch of usually independent developers, but not always, to show off some of their games that won't be out for a good while. So it's mostly to kind of drum up wish lists and get those numbers up, and maybe they can get some better publishing deals out of that because they can say, hey, look, millions of people have wishlisted my game. Don't you want to get in on the ground floor and give me money? Pay for me to develop the game and so on. It's also an opportunity to just play some games that are a little bit different, a little bit more interesting, and there's, it's free. It's the cost of whatever it takes to download the game. We will be checking that out next week. I'll talk more about that in the channel update. And then the last thing for our update is Epic, as I said, are back to giving away their free games. So this week, the free game is a game called Doors Paradox, which is a relaxing puzzle escape game. Make your way through a variety of handcrafted 3D dioramas, look for useful objects, find hidden clues, and solve fun puzzles. Unravel the mysterious adventure about chaos, order, and the surreal. So it's The Room, basically. That's what it sounds like to me. Anyway, whatever. I mean, it's free. And, actually free. You don't have to sign up for a subscription or whatever. You do have to make an Epic account. I guess that's how they get you. It's the beginning of the month, so that means some platforms have had a monthly refresh. I forgot to check Xbox, so we'll look at that next week instead. But anyway, February's monthly games for PlayStation Plus Essential, which is the basic tier for PlayStation Plus. It's the one you need to play online if you want to play online. First up is Foam Stars, which we talked about already as part of the State of Play. It's Splatoon. It's a 4v4 party-style, fun time arena thing. It's another attempt to make a 4v4 shooter that isn't a shooter, which is kind of what Splatoon was supposed to be. We did see a raft of those a good while ago. There's one that was just dodgeball. There's another that was capture the flag kind of thing, or a tag game or something like that. It was a wrestling type one as well. It's mostly just sort of branch out from shooters, because not everybody likes shooters. Anyway, Foam Stars launching day one into PlayStation Plus, I guess, if you're interested in that kind of thing. Roller Drome, we did actually play on the channel as part of my Foley Plays Games a Bit, where we play newly released, at the time, Roller Drome, for a couple of hours. I liked it. I thought it was a lot of fun. I did start playing it again off stream a while ago, and then I hit a big brick wall because it gets really hard later on. Roller Drome is a mix of an arena shooter and Tony Hawk's Pro Skater. So you are doing tricks on your inline skates. You use those tricks to build up momentum, multipliers, and so on, and shoot enemies who are in the arena with you, and the enemies are doing their best to stop you doing that. The more tricks you can build up, the more damage you do off attacks, I think is the way it works. Or no, sorry. You do tricks to get ammo back. That's the way it works. Because you don't have a lot of ammo. But you do have a lot of different guns to work your way through, a lot of different tricks, there's a lot of different maps and stuff. It's a fun time, but yeah, it gets hard. It gets hard really quickly. And then Steel Rising, I think, got really eclipsed by Lies of P, but it is effectively the same game. You are, again, an animatronic puppet kind of thing. It's set in France. I think Lies of P isn't... is Lies of P set in Austria, maybe? Pinocchio, I think, is set in Austria. I'm not sure. Anyway, it's the same kind of Dark Souls-y type gameplay, Bloodborne type gameplay. Steel Rising is interesting. It has an interesting stamina mechanic that I quite liked. But yeah, it definitely got overshadowed by Lies of P. But Lies of P is not on PlayStation Plus. Steel Rising is. Just saying, if you're already paying for PlayStation Plus, give it a shot. And then Fall Guys is getting a bunch of cosmetics or whatever. Anyway, moving on. Those are some of the games you can play soon-ish. But what if you wanted to play something right now? Well, you can if you want, I guess. Play Suicide Squad. I don't know why you would bother. What I've seen from the critical reception is it's okay. It's not good, it's not bad, it's whatever. It's a shooter. It's a shooter-looter thing. My standpoint is I would rather have played the Justice League. Because at least those characters are different. Whereas these 4 characters are all the same. There's no real difference between them. And also, I'm kind of done with the gloomy, grim, dark thing of kill your heroes stuff. You know? Kind of want to go back to the actual heroics instead. Anyway, it's there. I've seen leaks and spoilers and what have you for the story, and yeah, I'm not particularly keen to check it out. But it's there, it's out. We have a little bit more to talk about, though, in industry bullshit for Suicide Squad. Anyway, also out this week is Grand Blue Fantasy Relink. Grand Blue Fantasy Relink is a action JRPG in the vein of something like the Tales of series, which we don't really see a whole lot of anymore. It is technically a sequel, but I think the original game never left Japan. I'm not sure. Or if it did, it's like more than 20 years old at this point. But I think you can drop into it and just go with it. I think you might miss some in jokes, and that's probably it. That was the wrong button. We get into some combat gameplay, what have you. I played a little bit of the demo, quite liked it. There's a massive roster of characters, because the Grand Blue games were a kind of gacha thing, which is a sort of randomly, you will just get new characters kind of thing. I don't think it works that way in this game. I haven't gotten, like, the demo didn't show anything like that. But anyway, we will be playing this next week as part of my Fully Plays Games a Bit, because I want to play it. So I'm going to play it on the channel first, and then I'm going to play it off stream, because that's going to be a very long game. And I think it might be a just for me type thing, like Raincode is really, but whatever, I've committed to playing that on stream. Anyway, and then last is a remake, remaster, whatever way you want to look at, of Persona 3. Persona 3 Reloaded, or Reload, it was kind of the beginning of the good Persona games. A lot of Persona fans, at least that I've seen talking about these games, are kind of saying that, yeah, just don't bother with Persona 1 and 2. Just ignore them and start at 3. The Persona games, much like Final Fantasy, they are completely distinct. The other one. They're completely distinct games, have their own story, have their own things going on. They share some mechanics and some motifs, but otherwise they're independent storyline characters and so on. Persona 3 is usually considered one of the better ones. But it's kind of hard to tell. It's like, yeah, Persona 3 is like 9.8 and Persona 5 is 9.7. It's like, they're all really good if you're into the turn-based JRPG stuff, which I am. Anyway, we'll have to give that a look at some point. Anyway, unfortunately though, it is now time to talk about the worst part of video games, video game industry. So, Embracer Group has continued to not embrace anybody. It is, if anything, pushing people away. Eidos Montreal lays off 97 staff, and like, obviously the layoff of the 97 staff is the worst part of this news, but I am still very much bummed that the new Deus Ex game has been cancelled, because I really like those games. And we don't have any real immersive sims right now, because Arcane is working on Redfall, and they're kind of the only immersive sim developer. And Starfield was garbage. Or not garbage, but Starfield it's boring. It's not bad, it's just boring. And they're, like, Bethesda and Arcane were kind of the only people doing immersive sims. There are a couple of really interesting and intriguing indie games on the way that are doing the immersive sim genre, but their release date is quite a while off at this point. Anyway, so yeah, Embracer Group is continuing to shit itself. You may recall they acquired tons of developers and tons of IP like 4 years ago or so, and then a $2 billion deal with the Saudi Arabian prince fell through, and it sounds like they had already spent the money buying all of these studios, or leveraging debt to buy all these studios, which is what really happened, and then leveraged that debt on top of those studios. And hey, wouldn't you know it, studios can't pay their debts now that they didn't have until you bought them, you fuck. So now they have to lay off people. Of course, the people who should be getting laid off aren't getting laid off. They continue to swan about in their yachts and private jets. But that's not the only layoffs happening, because of course it isn't. Devolver Digital boss steps down following layoffs, so at least somebody took, well, I was gonna say somebody took, responsibility for it and decided to step down, but that's not actually what happened. They've actually just swapped places with the former CEO, because despite the layoffs, Devolver Digital is actually doing really well. Outgoing CEO Douglas Moran has departed as part of planning for Devolver's long-term growth and development, yada yada yada. He has been replaced by co-founder and former CEO. So they've just swapped places, really. Devolver announced yesterday that 28 people are set to lose their jobs from the Polish-based Artificer this year, but Devolver are actually doing well as part of their IPO, and their stock is up and so on. And they've got a lot of good games along the way, so why did they lay off people? You know why. You know why. And that's not the only layoffs. Airship Syndicate is laying off 12 staff. So this is the repercussions of Digital Extremes deciding not to publish. What is it called? It's not called Wayfinder. Wayfarer, maybe? Oh, it is called Wayfinder. There it is. Wayfinder is in early access at the moment. Digital Extremes were planning to publish it for Airship Syndicate. They've since pulled out of that, citing the typical issues now is that they leveraged too much debt during the time when the interest rates were basically zero. Now the interest rates have gone up and they can't actually afford those bills. Dickheads. 12 people have reportedly been laid off. President such and such and CEO have also been taking pay cuts, which is good. That's what you're supposed to do. They're attempting to still stay afloat as a independent developer. Now that Digital Extremes has left, they're kind of on the hook to do all of the publishing for Wayfinder. Who knows how well that will turn out. Hopefully things do work out for them. I think there's still more layoff news. Still more layoff news. Sega of America to lay off 61 staff next month. So we're hearing about this a month in advance because Sega of America has a union. All the other ones, it's just they're gone. The only reason we're actually hearing about this one before it happens is because Sega has a union. They are required by law to give employees 60 days advance notice of sizable layoff. 61 people is a sizable layoff. The kind of frustrating part about this is that this layoff isn't because of a downturn in finances or needing to restructure for long-term viability, something. This is purely because Sega are planning to outsource the QA department. And the QA department is the unionized part of the company, so they're planning to let go the unionized people. They're gonna get some lawsuits out of that one. But okay, they're probably just gonna eat the cost of it. They're gonna eat the cost of it because these layoffs follow huge success of Like a Dragon Infinite Wealth that is making a lot of money for them. I think they'll just eat the fine and go with it. Even having the union won't necessarily protect you because there aren't enough, really. There just aren't enough unions in the industry. They need everybody to be unionized. All right. This isn't layoff news, but it might result in layoffs in the first place. Square Enix absorbs Tokyo RPG Factory. Tokyo RPG Factory are a subsidiary of Square Enix already. They had a certain amount of independence, and they kind of went off to make their own games, and Square Enix would publish them. So they made 3 RPGs that were pretty good. They weren't amazing. They weren't terrible. They were better than okay. I quite liked them, but they definitely didn't sell well. So I Am Setsuna was their first one in 2016, which is very much Final Fantasy X, but with like chibi characters more or less. Lost Sphere is the one I didn't play a lot of, but it played a lot like I Am Setsuna, with a little bit more kind of freedom. Onanaki, I played a lot of, actually, I quite liked it. Was an action RPG. I Am Setsuna was more of a turn-based kind of thing. Onanaki was a more real-time combat. I quite enjoyed it, but yeah, I mean, it didn't sell well, so it's not surprising that they've been absorbed. At least they haven't been. For now, we don't know if they've been let go. Square Enix did the same thing with Luminous Productions, who are the people behind Forspoken, because Forspoken didn't do well, so they've also been reabsorbed. Anyway, moving on. Less about the layoff stuff. Okay, so again, as I said, there was going to be some stuff we needed to talk about for Suicide Squad. So of course, Warner Brothers, because they're a disgusting parasite on the video game industry, they got in on the, hey, we're going to charge you an extra $40 and we'll let you play the game early, even though it's not really what's happening. What's really happening is if you want to play the game on release date, you'll have to pay an extra $40. That's what's really happening, but whatever. But then the servers just didn't hold up. They were down for an entire day. So you've paid $100 for the game and to play it 3 days early, but really what you got was 2 days early. And even then, it's only 2 days early if you lived in like New Zealand. So that's, I don't know, a couple of hundred people, maybe a couple of thousand people playing Suicide Squad early. 1,000 is probably too much. Vast majority of people got maybe 1.5 days. Maybe. And that's if you didn't sleep and don't have a job. And we question how you can have $100 to spend on a game but not have a job. I don't know. Anyway, point is they did not get the 3 days. But they were still charged for it. So they advertised this thing as a premium aspect of the deluxe edition, was to get your whatever 3 days of early access, and you didn't get it. Because of a bug that meant some players booted up the game and discovered the entire campaign was already completed. So there's a fairly egregious bug there on day one that somehow they didn't spot. They had to take the servers down to fix it. Because the game doesn't have an offline mode, that's right, it's an always online game, you couldn't play it. Anyway, players bought this fancy version because they wanted to play the game early, and they couldn't. If you're going to treat early access as a premium marketing thing, then you're going to have to deliver on that early access. And then there's a bit more here from Kotaku's Zach Sweezen, where they talk about how this whole early access thing, the 3 days early gameplay thing for consoles, is not that. It's already released. They've gone through certification. Sony or Xbox or whoever have stamped them to say, yep, you're good to go. That's a release. Like, you're not getting it early here. Everyone else is getting it late. Is really what's happening. But anyway, moving on. Blizzard's new president is former Call of Duty boss. So this is kind of more highlighting how Blizzard typically would have promoted from within. But now that Microsoft has kind of taken over, Blizzard has had that reputation of, the boys club. There was the whole sexual abuse, sexual harassment issue. There was the Cosby Suite thing that happened at BlizzCon and so on. So they've promoted somebody from outside the company. I mean, they're still Activision. They were still in that whole sphere. It's announced its new president, which is Activision's former general manager of its Call of Duty franchise, Johanna Faries. So it's kind of interesting that Microsoft have placed somebody from outside the company to head it, which does give them some kind of way to put it. Not deniability exactly, but you wouldn't expect them to have been part of that whole culture. They have a different culture. They might bring a different culture to it. The other way to look at it, of course, is that Call of Duty is their big moneymaker. It does not, they have like an annualized release. Blizzard does not make annualized games. They take their time making their games. Is this an attempt to change that and so on? There's kind of a quote here from Johanna Faries that is somewhat okay. I've discussed this with the Blizzard leadership team, which is saying that the way they make Call of Duty is not the way they make Blizzard titles. And I'm walking into this role with sensitivity to those dynamics, deep respect for Blizzard as we begin to explore taking our universe to even higher heights. It seems fine. I would point out that her role previous to being Call of Duty general manager was that she had a similar position in the NFL. So she's not really coming from a video game background, whereas the Blizzard people would have been all in the video game industry and been promoted from within. There's going to be some weird business and creativity conflicts, I think. You've already seen in the Call of Duty franchise. It's a little concerning, but at the same time, I don't think they could have continued to promote from within in Blizzard because they still have that hanging over them. A lot of the people are still there who were there in the time the accusations were made. People at the head of the company are gone, but there's going to be people further down that were still part of it and they just didn't know. Anyway, okay, in-game preservation news, because I do like to harp on about this. Spec Ops The Line has been removed from digital stores due to expiring licenses. So, Spec Ops The Line, you may not be familiar with, is a pretty standard military third-person shooter. Came out PS3, Xbox 360 days. What kind of set it apart was its narrative. This was kind of a long time before war titles started to kind of delve into the PTSD thing, the kind of psychosis from being subjected to like the horrors of war and stuff like that. Where Spec Ops: The Line kind of made it part of the narrative, and they kind of leaned into how American patriotism, jingoism, and so on is bad. Actually, it's a bad thing. The American military seeing themselves as the heroes all the time is going to lead to problems, and that's kind of how Spec Ops: The Line looked at it. I've done a full Let's Play of this game over on my YouTube channel if you want to check it out. The gameplay itself is fine. It's a serviceable shooter. It's really more the storyline that's really interesting, as this main character kind of unravels in real time. But you can't play it now because it's been delisted, and it's been delisted for what they say are expiring licenses. So Spec Ops: The Line will no longer be available on online storefronts, as several partnership licenses related to the game are expiring. They didn't say specifically what those licenses are, but it is somewhat expected that it is music, because it's almost always music. There are some licensed music tracks in the game that are used to pretty good effect. The Line was available on GOG and Xbox, but is now gone. So it's no longer available on Steam or GOG or Xbox. I don't think it was ever on Epic. It's a PS3 game, so there's no way to play it on Sony stores, unless you have a PS3, basically, and still have the disc. We don't know if it's been delisted from the PlayStation 3 store because the PlayStation 3 store has been decommissioned. So who knows? But probably. Anyway, so unless you have the disc at this point, you can't play it anymore. You can't buy it anymore. You can still play it. If you had already bought it on PC or already bought it on Xbox or whatever, you can. But if you wanted to kind of jump in on what was a cult classic, and I'm kind of telling you now that it's a good story, and you're like, hey, that's interesting, but you can't. That's a game preservation issue. And I am kind of curious, and it hasn't ever really been explained to me, or I just haven't delved into it, really, is probably the more accurate part. But why do video game music licenses expire when film license music doesn't? TV music licenses don't. You know, I can go back and watch a film from the 80s and it would have had licensed music and it's still fine. Like those that's older than Spec Ops: The Line. Why is that music still available? What's the issue? Like, what is the technical, nuanced, legal reason for why video game music license is allowed to expire, but TV and film and what have you aren't? Now, I don't know. I've never looked into it, to be honest, but I'm kind of curious what the actual reason would be and why video games aren't subject to that. Kind of fall under the same umbrella, I would think. Anyway, last thing we're going to look at. So this report has been kind of doing the rounds on some various video game sites, and it's making its way into forums and Discords, discussions, and what have you. 95% of studios are working on or aim to release a live service game. In this survey of 537 game studios, there's about 500 of them said that they were working on it. So that's a concerning number, right? It's so concerning that you would probably think that's gotta be bullshit, right? And yeah, kinda, it is. It's important to... So two things about this particular report that they're talking about. The report was commissioned by a venture capital fund that funds live service games. So there's already a bit of a bias here. And the other issue is that how they defined a live service is not how you would define a live service game. They defined a live service as the game does things on the internet. You know, it has to call the video game server to either pull down content or to check for logins or daily things or something like that. Not that it's a game that lives literally online, like a Destiny type, like a World of Warcraft kind of thing or something like that. They're talking more like, you know, games get DLC, something like that. They get like a Christmas event or something like that instead, which is not a live service game. That's not what that is. This is more of these studios saying, yeah, we're going to do updates, basically. we're gonna patch the game. Effectively, 95% of students say we'll patch our game if there are bugs. Good. I'm glad you said that. So this isn't like the sky is falling and all of the games in the future are going to be live service things. This is more just games will be supported. And I'd be a little concerned about the 5% who said they're not going to support their game afterwards. Anyway, yeah, there are problems with that survey and the questions and how they were asked and how they were answered and so on. So don't ignore it. Just ignore it. It's not worth your time. Anyway, we're going to finish with some things that are coming out from the community. So the Palworld mod people who had put up a Pokemon mod over on Nexus Mods, which was then very quickly, Nintendo fired their cease and desist search and destroy missile to get that down. Nexus Mods then said their policy will be that we're just not going to host Pokemon mods because we don't want to deal with Nintendo. So in retaliation, somewhat, they've released this sort of sarcastic Pokemon mod, which is like legally distinct pocket creatures mod. And you can see like this raptor with a flower on its head is Bulbasaur, really, and this blue penguin is Piplup and what have you. But they're just called like blue penguin and like floral raptor and that kind of thing. And yellow rat somewhere is Pikachu. It's just meant to be a stupid legally distinct thing in that the same way Palworld is considered legally distinct, even though those creatures look very like Pokemon, but they're not. Could they have done the same thing with the other Pokemon models? Possibly. Anyway, it's very, very dumb. Going from something very, very dumb to something equally dumb, but for very, very different reasons. Last of Us Part 2 actor says fans threatened her son. So, a documentary around The Last of Us 2 called Grounded has released. It's mostly like a behind the scenes on how the game was made, but there's a significant chunk is given over to the harassment that the developers received, that the actors received after the game was launched. It's considerable vitriol over some story elements into the game. I won't go into it. Probably already know what the story element is. There's a spoiler warning there for what is the actual reason, but this is kind of more of a standout thing because it kind of just highlights how the video game community can and often is just disgusting and just filled with incredibly entitled people who either don't think about the things they're saying or don't care how it's going to come across. Laura Bailey, who played Abby, or did the voice of Abby rather, was subjected to harassment from disgruntled fans who then threatened her son, who was only 2 years old at the time, because they didn't like her character. Like you're threatening a child. So already you're a piece of shit. But also, she didn't write the fucking character. She's just acting. There's a script. You're going after the wrong person. And even then, you don't like somebody, just don't fucking play the game. Done. Leave a review. 0 stars or something. I don't know. But going this far is absolutely uncalled for. You know, it's obviously going to lead people to just not engage with the video game community at all. Voice actors would have been like very engaged with the video game community 10 years ago, 15 years ago, and now because of shit like this, they just don't. And who can blame them, honestly? Bailey tearfully spoke about death threats that she had received. Bailey says that this taught her to keep her distance from the public, so I don't think she really does much at conventions anymore because of this kind of thing. I hated the game, but threatening people is for psychos. Exactly. Like, I'm not a fan of Last of Us. I've spoken a couple of times on how I just don't like the games, but that's where it ends. I don't like them. I'm not gonna go after Laura Bailey or Troy Baker or whoever, or Neil Druckmann, and be like harassing them constantly, threatening their family to murder them and what have you. Like, come on. Like, some of these people were then like referred to like police because like you are now threatening a child. Like, anyway, the level of harassment has become so commonplace in the video game industry, and public-facing women in the space are most often the target. This again, they're kind of shepherd here going into how even like The Last of Us Part 2, it's been a while since that came out, but this hasn't changed. I just vented while playing it and then exploded the dog. Dog go boom. That's what I think about your game. I dislike your game so much that I'm going to kill a dog. And I would never do that in real life. Even in video games, I try to avoid attacking the dog. Anyway, what was I saying? Yeah, like this hasn't improved. It's gotten worse, if anything. They're kind of highlighting here how the person who played Mary Jane in Spider-Man 2 faced, again, threats about that. I don't know why. I haven't played Spider-Man 2. I don't know what the issue was. Just because she was a woman, I think, is probably what happened. The voice actor who played Ada Wong in Resident Evil 4 Remake similarly received these kind of threats. She has no interest now in dealing with the video game community. Probably won't act in a video game again. It's disproportionately towards women, which kind of highlights how disgusting the video game community can be and often is. Do have to speak back against this kind of thing. I don't have a massive amount of reach on this channel. I do my best. I do my part, but there's a lot of... what is the word? There's a lack of interest from publishers and higher ups in development studios and so on to push back on these things, to like defend their people, to defend their developers, and to defend the voice actors, performance actors, and so on, because they don't want to alienate the fan base who will spend money on the game, right? They don't want to affect their bottom line. That is, like, I don't want to go into the whole business thing, end of things, but that is an issue with business people being in charge of these things. They're only interested in shareholder value. And if coming out against people harassing Laura Bailey would have affected the bottom line, then they're not going to do that. Like, I do remember Naughty Dog putting out something about, you know, this harassment isn't okay, and you know, this is not what we want from our community. We heard nothing from Sony though. Just radio silence. Same with Spider-Man. I don't think Capcom said anything about Ada Wong. Could be wrong about that, but I don't think they did. And yeah, that's a kind of issue where they're more interested in ensuring they make all the money possible instead of actually calling out their customers to say this is not okay. They would have a much bigger impact than some guy in, you know, the shadows of YouTube. I'm not even in the shadows. I'm in the void down at the bottom somewhere. You know, I'm not going to get the message out. Anyway, I'm going to move on. We'll leave, well, I was going to say Suicide Squad, but I don't want to put Suicide Squad out there, so I'm going to leave Grand Blue Fantasy instead. Anyway, that was your news for the 29th to the 4th of February, 2024. Some stuff out of State of Play, but a lot of the kind of bigger games are quite a while off yet. We're not sure if they're going to be summer of this year. Are they going to be autumn of this year? Are they going to be winter this year? We don't know. It's just this year at some point. Some more stuff from Vampire the Masquerade 2. I don't know how to feel about it. Like, it looks fun, but it doesn't look like Bloodlines. Bloodlines was a much more immersive sim type thing, whereas this looks a lot more like an action first-person thing. Which is fine, but kind of make your own game. And make Bloodlines 2 properly be Bloodlines 2. Anyway, lots of layoffs. Layoffs are continuing, starting to hit big studios now. Sega, Crystal Dynamics, Eidos Montreal, Square Enix. Again, this is people playing with, you know, loans, leveraging debt, and so on, and knowing that they won't have to pay it back. Knowing that, you know, the peons lower down will have to pay it back instead, who had no stake, no say whatsoever in this kind of financing deals. It's really frustrating and kind of depressing, to be honest. Anyway, the Then we had some stuff about how Suicide Squad wanted to get people to pay extra to have 3 days early access, but then didn't actually provide those 3 days early access. They did give apology money, but it wasn't. It's not real money. It was fun bucks. No, it was Suicide Squad bucks. The fake money that anytime it comes up in court or in lawsuits or whatever, they go out of their way to say it's not worth anything. So they can't be held liable for loss of money when services shut down because the fake money isn't worth anything. But apparently it's worth enough to placate people. It's worth $40 for you not giving them the early access. They get to have it both ways because the court never pushes them on it. But anyway. And then there was that stuff about, the Grounded documentary and how the video game community can sometimes be gross. Anyway. That's our industry news. What's happening on the channel? We don't have a massive amount of news for the channel. Again, this is our roadmap for planned Let's Plays for this year. This may change as time goes on. It's unlikely I'll get to all of these, but these are the planned ones anyway, and some new ones will pop up as games come out and what have you. Anyway, Final Fantasy III is finished. We have begun playing Inscription. Raincode is still moving along. I have no idea how far I am into that. Resident Evil HD, probably coming to the end of that. I'll probably finish it this week. I haven't decided if I'm going to roll straight into Resident Evil 0 or if I'm going to take a break and play something else. I don't know yet. Anyway, that is how that is looking, and the schedule for next week is as so. So Tuesday, Resident Evil, probably finish out Jill's Route. Wednesday, we'll take a look at Grand Blue Fantasy as part of my Fully Plays Games a Bit series. We're going to play it for first 3 hours or so of the game. Continuing Inscription, I've moved it to Thursday, away from Wednesday. Steam Next Fest, Friday, I'm going to basically take Friday evening to play through some of the demos that I liked from Steam Next Fest and just show them off. The ones that actually work, at least, on the Steam Deck. Kind of randomly if it'll actually work on the Steam Deck. A lot of these games haven't been optimized yet. They're just demos of what they have working right now. It's not expected that they'll also have a Linux port that will work on Steam Deck, so we'll see. And then Raincode will be continuing on Saturdays because I need the extra time on Saturday evenings to get through that game because it's really, really long. And then Weekly News Recap, we're back around to what we were doing right now. Anyway, that is it from me. Thanks, Melwan, for keeping me company this afternoon, going through the news. I may be back later today, but probably not, because I think I'm just going to record some Monster Hunter. Record some Monster Hunter gameplay and then put that up over on YouTube. As I've said previously, Monster Hunter is going to turn into an off-stream Let's Play, because I just don't have the time to fit it into the schedule this way. So I'm just going to play that in my own time, and I'll put up, edited video as I'm going along. Anyway, I will be back probably on Tuesday for Resident Evil. Right. I'm going to head off. Have a good rest of your day, and hopefully see you on Tuesday. Bye-bye. Thank you.